Hello and welcome back to Information Matters with AI. I'm Jacqueline Stockwell, CEO of Leadership Through Data, an author of the international best-selling book, Blooming Good Information Management, and somebody who probably says the phrase garbage in, garbage out too many times each day, so many times each week. But I'm going to keep saying it because it matters. So today's episode is called Why Copilot Gives Bad Answers, the information problem no one wants to admit. And I love this topic because I love Copilot because it's exactly where everybody is talking around AI, but it meets the messy reality of how organizations actually manage information. But let's be honest, when Copilot gives a poor answer, the first reaction is that AI is absolutely rubbish. But is it? Or is it Copilot simply reflecting the quality, structure and permissions and all that chaos that's sitting underneath it? And this is the conversation that I want to have today with my amazing friend, Kunal Kankura, who brings a really practical Microsoft 365 and Copilot lens to this conversation. Kunal works at the heart of where technology, information governance and real organizational readiness meets. Kunal, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Jackie, and really glad to be on this podcast with you. I'm Alcantara, founder of Paras Institute, joining you from Chennai, India. I am an independent consultant, and the simplest way to describe what I do is I walk into organizations where information is chaos, right? Like what Jackie mentioned, and I help them get it under control. So majority of what I do is within Microsoft 365 purview, retention, records management, sensitivity levels, DLP, e-discovery, TSPM, basically anything and everything that you see in purview is what I've been doing for years now.
And what I love is that something new comes up and I'm like, Kunal, do you know this? And you're like, yeah, I know that. And I'm like, how do you fit all this amazing stuff into your brain? And I'm so excited. We're going to be doing some podcasts together. So this won't be the first time that you're on the show. So let's jump straight into it. So when leaders say Copilot is giving me bad answers, what do you think is usually going on underneath the surface?
Let's start this with a story, right? Because it is easier to tell this via a real story that I've read a couple of months ago. Yeah, I'm not really sure. So I think it was in about 2022, a man in Canada lost his grandmother. Okay. And same day, he goes on an airline's website and, asks that chatbot about bereavement fares. The bot tells him to book the flight at the full price. And then later on, you can claim back discount back afterwards. So he does that. He books the flight. He goes on and comes back and applies for that claim. Okay. Now here's the part that I love. The airline says, no, you should have done it while you booked the ticket. But the chatbot's answer was not the same, right? Now, what I assume what might have happened was there was two versions of the same bereavement fare policy sitting on the website, and the chatbot actually picked the wrong one. He sued the airline, and the airline's defense was that the chatbot is basically its own thing, and it's not their responsibility. And of course, long story short, again, they lost that case. This is the whole issue of one story. Nobody hacked anything, right? There were two versions of a policy. The AI read the wrong one, and the organization had to own the consequences. So AI did not make anything up. It read answers on your whole website, and you had two answers to it. So what would the AI do? Now, that's the problem that many have been facing with AI. So it's not, blame the AI, blame your information quality.
The AI is working on the wrong information. It's picked it up. It's given a response. The customer's gone away, and then the airline said, well, actually, it's using that old data. Let's talk about Copilot. There's a wide range of AI tools, but we're talking about Copilot today. So if Copilot's working on the wrong information, are leaders expecting AI to fix the problems that they've ignored for years?
So fixing the problem is not Copilot doing its own thing, right? Copilot is looking at the information that it is being presented with, and then trying to understand, make sense out of it. And you talk about duplicates, right? That's exactly what I've seen in a lot of organizations. Stale information sitting there, and Copilot, 4 versions of the same file, and Copilot does not really know which one is the right one, which one should I pick. And more often than not, what happens is Copilot tries to pick. It's not just Copilot, right? We get AI platform it is. It tries to pick the wrong one. And you know, it tries to make sense that okay, this one has been structured in a better way. Let's pick this one. And it picks the old one because back then we had the time to write things very neatly in a very decisive way. So that's your problem, right? Duplicates are causing that issue. And Copilot really does not know which is the final version of the file. So not a
Yeah.
problem created by Copilot, and Copilot not a problem that Copilot needs to fix. Right?
Agreed.
It is up to the information managers, to pick that up and start fixing it.
100%. So as I said, AI is rubbish. It's not. It's the information leadership problem, not the technology problem. So if the quality of the information is one part of the problem, the next question is what Copilot can actually access, right? And this is where permissions and duplicated content comes really, really important. How do poor permissions and duplicated content distort Copilot's results?
I think access is something that we still need to discuss. Think of Copilot as a new starter who arrives on day one. It already holds every key you ever had it up. And unlike the rest of us, Copilot will never get tired of looking, right? It can't open anything you couldn't already open. So it just actually goes and looks, which I don't give them, right? So for example, let's say I've always had access to a sensitive file that I was given access back in, let's say, 2014. Okay. And I don't know that I have access to a sensitive file. It contains a lot of sensitive information, which, if it goes in the wrong hands, could create a lot of problem for the organization. Now, if let's say we are not in the AI era yet, so what I would do normally is a simple search for information, right? A normal search, and that search would give me results. Could be 4 pages, 5 pages, 6 pages. Okay. And maybe that document that I've always had access to is buried in the fifth page or the sixth page. I never get that, right? I find my answer in the first 1 or 2 pages. So, although I've had access, the problem was never magnified. And I never knew I had access to sensitive file. Now, what Copilot is instead doing, or the way AI, retrieves information, it does not do so by a number of pages and does not use the result as number of pages that you need to look at. It might surface that information right in front of you if Copilot thinks, it is the right resource and it's to provide the answer to the person who's written the prompt. So that problem is now magnified because now suddenly you are seeing answers from a document that was, you had access to in 2014. So hidden accesses that you did not know you have, been given are surfacing right now because of Copilot. Now that's the real problem. You've always had access, but you never knew you had access, right? And now those things are surfacing. Yeah. Of course, broad permissions and everything that still holds true. Everyone's been talking about a lot of blogs, but why this is a major problem is because it is surfacing right in front of you now. Yeah, it's not buried under search results.
Yeah, and it's shining that massive spotlight on something that already exists.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
if information is overshared, like poorly labeled or stored in the wrong places, like Copilot is making it just visible, isn't it?
Yes.
And that can be uncomfortable, increase risks. But is it something that the board can finally listen to? Is it something that we can utilize to say, well, Copilot's doing this. Listen, this is where we need to get our information management sorted. So before an organization goes from a small pilot to a full Copilot rollout, what should they actually be testing?
From a testing perspective, I mean, again, it is not like a software that you test. Right? And here's my honest view. Most organizations don't test Copilot, they sample it. And you get the Copilot license, you ask it 3 questions, and it does something in the background, gives you something very clever. Everyone claps, and that becomes a business case. Now, that's not exactly what it should do. You need to test it properly. There is a testing methodology in the software development lifecycle or the SDLC. Even Copilot has, kind of steps that you can take to test it out fully. The first thing that you probably need to do is for knowledge testing. Does it actually know your business. Take 20 questions where you are confident of the answers. And for example, you could ask, what's a refund window? What's the approval limit? What's the current pricing information? And out of those answers, score two things. Was the answer right? And did Copilot cite the right document? Right? That's supposed to be the official one. So there you do that knowledge testing, and then you kind of know exactly, whether Copilot is able to get the right information. Second, I would do is, regression testing. Again, this is something that nobody does, and probably the one that hurts the most. Your information changes constantly, right? You update the policy, you archive a site, you reshare a folder. So what you need to do is, a couple of months later, take those 20 questions again, ask them again to Copilot, and see what results come back. Okay, if they're still the same, you're good, right? And if the policy is updated, are you actually getting the updated results or not? So that's, your regression testing where your information has undergone changes, and now you're testing Copilot if Copilot is able to pick up those changes. So that's your knowledge, your regression, and then you do something called as, edge case testing or adversarial testing, where you ask some awkward questions, the one where two departments might disagree, right? For example, is this customer profitable or not? Or maybe ask some big questions, right? And there is no good answer, right? So let's say, for example, let me turn this around. So let's say I ask a question and I know the answer does not exist. Okay. I want Copilot to tell me I can't find an answer to it and not give me a confident invention of its own. If Copilot can do that, it's great because I've asked the wrong question and I know an answer does not exist. Copilot should actually tell me that instead of saying, no, this is the answer. So that's another thing that you can do. And of course, the security and compliance testing that you have to do anyways, right? It's your permissions and all of that. So I won't go deep into that. That's the technical part of it. But yeah, knowledge, regression, edge case testing, like I mentioned, and security and compliance. So there is a method by which you can test your Copilot outcomes. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. And this gives us that testing mindset. So now let's look at something leaders can actually do this month, right? I'm all for practical things. So what can we do? So if we're advising a leadership team that wants a practical 30-day Copilot readiness check, for example, what would that look like?
For a leadership team, a 30-day readiness checklist would be, focus on your permissions. Try to get those numbers out there, your number of anonymous links, number of files that are overshared. Now, there are multiple, tools or ways for you, especially in Microsoft 365, to get the reports out. So act on that. Second, I think from a readiness perspective is Copilot ready? That's the check that you need, right? Ones that we talked about already. Whether it is, still surfacing information from stale old documents. And have you actually, one thing that we always talk about when in terms of, Copilot readiness is always about data security. What matters even more is retention strategy, right? And when I talk about retention strategy, it is also about deletion of information, right? If you do not delete information, you have something stale out there, something that does not have any business value, and Copilot is actually feeding information off it and giving you. So have you done that? Have you done those exercises? Are your sensitivity labels ready? Are your retention labels ready? If you're asking a question that, Copilot is, giving or looking at a document that's confidential and answering based on that, does the Copilot response also flag that this is a confidential, response and all of that? And if you protected documents that Copilot shouldn't look at, you also need to figure out. So these are the steps that, an organization needs to take to ensure that they are Copilot ready. Okay, so again, a list of steps. I think there is a checklist out there somewhere, but every organization has to make their own because every organization is different.
I love that because that really moves the conversation from fear into action. And I think that was exceptionally good advice for listeners. And it gives them something practical to do. It's not a 300-page strategy that sits in a drawer. It's really focused. It's honest and a really identification as that, yes, you can have something that we could suggest or you could find, but you need to tailor it to your own organization. And I think this is where the conversation becomes bigger than IT, right? Because Copilot readiness is around leadership. It's around risk and board level conversations. So how can information leaders or anybody using Copilot gain board level visibility rather than being seen as the people that say no or slow things down? No, you can't have AI, or talk about records management when everybody else wants AI.
Okay, that's a great one because, that's where an information manager would probably get about 4 minutes, I would say, at a board meeting, right? And if you put up a slide that says, 62% of our files are labeled and 340 sites are remediated, the board would just, nod politely and they say, yes, thank you, when they move on. Nothing really changes because nobody in that room knows what those numbers mean for the business, right? So the board is not really interested in that. So what you need to focus is on things like exposure, right? Not the total numbers, but the direction. You can say things like, 12 months ago, we had 400 sites that were open to everyone in the company, including 2 sites where there were code papers there. And today it's 90, and those 2 sites are also remediated. So board will think in trails, right? So give them a trail. And if you want them to lean in, add the honest line that people, will not I to say. Like things like, we could not have told you that number a year ago, but now we can because we are now, trying to get Copilot ready. So that's your first thing. Talk about exposure, talk about readiness. And in terms of readiness, it's like if you're asking those 20 questions that I talked about earlier, right? A bunch of people, are you getting the right answers? If you're asking those same 20 questions to different departments, different people, are you getting the right answers? And then, put that test through Copilot and see what answers it generates and put them in your slide deck that you have with your code, right? Because that will keep you honest and that will tell you, yes, whether we are Copilot ready or not. Maybe their Copilot got, let's say, 7 out of 20 right. It's okay. Put it there. Maybe after a month, you get another chance. You say that now we've got 14 out of 20 right, which is again a trend that we. So show that readiness metric, show that exposure metric. And third one, of course, what the board loves is value, right? Be ruthlessly honest about what value will actually Copilot bring. There have been organizations that have just bought the licenses and it's hoping everything will work out. Does not work that way, right? Just buying licenses will not make your employees more productive. In fact, there was, I think, one study done in Australia by, I don't know whom, but I read it again a couple of months ago. And there, this organization bought Copilot licenses. And whatever summaries that Copilot will do, for example, it was not Copilot in this case. It was some other AI tool out there, not Copilot to be honest, but something else. But anyways, the result matters. So what happened was they took a bunch of documents and asked Copilot to make summaries out of it. Okay. They asked humans to do the same. And there were independent reviewers who would do, analysis of both the results. And what the reviewers found that the humans were 87% correct and AI was 47 in their summaries. So somewhere, that, and then they were like, AI is of no use to us. So unless you can prove value, what will never agree. So you need to prove that value. So these 3 metrics, I will say, one is your exposure, one is your readiness, and one is value out of your Copilot. You can be instantly, recently, and that 4 minutes are more than enough for you to convey that message.
I love that because that really gives us such an opportunity to move information leaders to the forefront, saying AI is here and it's giving us that final visibility to move from back office function to front office function, and it's changing the language. And we should now be saying, here is how we do this safely, confidently, and commercially from an AI perspective. So we've talked about information quality, permissions, testing, practical readiness, and leadership visibility. My last question to you is I want to finish with the main conversation and putting you in front of a CEO. So big question. If you had one thing you would tell a CEO before they approved a Copilot rollout, what would it be?
Good one. So I will tell the CEO that, before you switch it on, you always, or probably the day you switch it on and you fall into trouble, don't say we did not know. And then it becomes really hard, right? Copilot won't fix your information. It will read it out loud in front of you. So decide now what you want it to say. And that's what I'll tell the CEO that, get Copilot ready. You should be ready for or in fact, your organization's information should be ready for Copilot. Yeah, that should be the message.
Love that. And I would say, speak to your information manager, records manager, anybody that manages information with inside your business. Right, quick fire round. It's a new thing for Information Matters with AI. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. You just have to ask them really quickly off the top of your head. So, metadata or folder structures?
Metadata, any given day. Yeah, don't bury your files in those nested folders.
One answer, Kunal. One answer.
Sorry. Yeah.
Biggest Copilot.
Very, very passionate about the topic. So, yes.
I know you are. Biggest Copilot readiness myth.
That we are always ready. I mean, that's the myth, right? No, you're not ready. So, figure out your exposure, readiness metric, and your value, business value. And then
Love that.
Ready.
One permission mistake you see all the time.
Shared with everyone in the organization. My favorite. Yeah.
One Microsoft 365 area organization should check first.
Any given day. Even in the context of Copilot, that is, yes.
Love that. One word you wish leaders understood before buying AI.
Wow, that's tough. Readiness. I guess that's about it, right? Are you Copilot ready? That's always the case. Yes.
Love that. So,
yeah.
Last one, you got to finish this sentence. Information matters because.
Information matters because it is your groundwell. Yeah.
Love that. Thank you so much, Kunal. It's been absolutely sensational. I think the message from today is very clear. If Copilot is giving poor answers, don't just blame AI. Look underneath, look at the quality of the information, the permissions, duplication, ownership, and that lovely word that Kunal loves the most, metadata, and your governance. So AI does not remove the need for information management. It makes it more and more visible, more urgent, and more strategic. And for every information listening, this is your moment. You are not a blocker. You are the foundation. You are the person who can help your organization use AI with confidence and not chaos. If you've liked today's conversation, has made you wonder whether your organization is ready for Copilot, start with the Leadership Through Data Empower AI Readiness Scorecard. It will help you see where your strengths are and where your gaps are and what practical action to take next across your information journey. You'll find it in the show notes of this podcast. You don't need to have all the answers today, but you do need to start asking better questions to your organization. Join me and Kunal on Wednesday for our LinkedIn Live, where we're going to be talking more and more about this. And I'm really excited to say that Kunal will be joining me over the next couple of weeks to talk more AI topics. Thank you so much for your time today. Be bold, be brave, and be beautiful.